There's a place inside you that no one else can enter. Your therapist cannot step inside it. Neither can your partner or the friend who has known you for 20 years. You can tell them what the room looks like. You can invite them to stand at the doorway and take a look. But the work that happens there, the real healing, must be done by you alone, with no one watching and no one able to do it for you. This is the truth that very few people talk about when it comes to healing. It is also the reason so many people spend years in therapy, attend every workshop, read every self-help book, follow every teacher with complete dedication, and still feel exactly the same deep inside. They have spent their lives knocking on the door of that inner room, hoping someone else would open it for them, but no one can. That door opens only from the inside. Carl Jung understood this long before many others in his field. Early in his career, he believed what most psychologists believed at the time, that the analyst was the main source of healing, and that real transformation happened through the relationship between the doctor and the patient. Then, something happened that completely changed the way he understood the human mind. In 1913, Jung went through what he later called a confrontation with his own unconscious. It was a period of deep emotional struggle that was so overwhelming, he questioned his own sanity for years. During that difficult journey, he discovered something he had never expected. None of his teachers could meet him there. The relationships that supported his outer life could not reach his inner world. The colleagues he respected most believed he was losing control. He found himself completely alone in that inner room, and the only way forward was to walk through it by himself. What he discovered on the other side of that lonely journey became the foundation of everything he taught for the rest of his life. He began to see his patients differently. He also began to see himself in a new way. Most importantly, he realized what true healing really required. And it turned out to be almost the opposite of what the psychiatric world had been teaching for many years. Today, I want to share what Jung discovered about healing yourself without depending on anyone else. You will learn why searching for someone outside yourself to rescue you often keeps you trapped inside the very pain you are trying to escape. You will understand what Jung called your inner authority, the part of you that must take the lead before real change can happen. You will also discover the kind of inner work that no one else can do for you, no matter how skilled, loving, or committed they are. Jung first noticed something interesting about the way people approached healing. Almost every patient who came to his office followed the same pattern. They arrived because they were suffering, but the way they described their pain revealed something important. They believed they were broken, and they believed he was the person who could fix them. They quietly expected him to diagnose them, guide them, solve their problems, and eventually free them from whatever was causing their suffering. Jung understood why they thought this way. The habit of looking outside ourselves for healing usually begins in childhood. When we are young, we truly depend on other people to comfort us, calm us, and help us understand our emotions. Parents or caregivers do the emotional work that children cannot yet do for themselves. At that stage of life, this is completely natural. It is how our nervous system learns safety and stability. But for many people, something goes wrong during that process. If the adults around you were emotionally absent, overwhelmed, unhealthy, or simply unable to meet your emotional needs, then a part of you remained waiting. It kept hoping that one day someone would finally give you the comfort, protection, and understanding you never received when you needed it most. That waiting does not disappear when you become an adult. It simply changes its target. Instead of waiting for parents, you begin waiting for partners, therapists, teachers, mentors, or even strangers to finally become the person who heals what was left unfinished in childhood. Jung saw this pattern again and again in his patients. He also understood the danger hidden inside it. As long as people believed healing came from him, they stayed emotionally in the position of a child waiting for a parent. They might gain knowledge, they might experience temporary emotional relief, but deep inside, the pattern of dependence remained unchanged. They were still waiting for someone else to save them. The only difference was that they had replaced their parents with a more educated authority figure. Then Jung realized something that completely changed his understanding of healing. He saw that constantly searching for someone outside yourself to rescue you was often the deepest wound itself, not just a result of it. People were not only hurting because of what happened in childhood, they continued hurting because they had given away their own inner authority and kept handing it over to anyone who seemed strong enough, wise enough, or qualified enough to carry it. This is the room no one else can enter for you. It is the place where you stop waiting. It is where you begin taking back the authority you gave away long before you understood its value. Jung's own inner journey helped him understand this more deeply than any theory ever could. During his personal crisis, the people and beliefs that had once supported him were no longer enough. His relationship with Freud had ended. His professional identity felt uncertain. Everything that had once helped him understand the world seemed to be falling apart. At that moment, he faced an important choice. He could search for another teacher, another system, another community, or another authority to guide him. Or he could enter that inner room alone and discover what was waiting there. He chose to go in alone, not because he felt fearless, but because he had no other choice. And inside that silence, he discovered something that changed his life forever. He found a quiet wisdom already living within him. It was not his ego. It was not his conditioning. It was not the knowledge he had gained through study or training. It was something much deeper. Something even deeper began to appear. When he stopped searching for answers outside himself, answers slowly started coming from within. Jung called this deeper center the self. To him, it was the inner guiding force that holds the conscious mind while reaching far beyond it. He discovered that when he stopped trying to explain his emotional crisis using the theories he had learned, and instead simply stayed present with whatever was happening inside him, something remarkable began to unfold. Images appeared, memories returned, powerful symbols rose into awareness. Sometimes he even experienced long conversations with inner figures that he had not consciously created. These inner figures seemed to carry important messages. Jung realized that the unconscious was constantly trying to communicate. If he could learn to listen instead of resisting it, he could take part in his own healing in a way that no other person could ever make possible. This became the great turning point in his life. Healing was not something another person did for him. It happened through the relationship he built with his own inner world. That relationship, the quiet one that existed inside the hidden room of his mind, was the only relationship that could truly reach the deepest wound. Jung did not conclude that therapy was useless or that human relationships had no value. He continued treating patients, continued practicing psychology, and continued valuing the important people in his life. What changed was his understanding of what those relationships could actually do. He came to believe that even the best therapist could only act like a guide helping someone through the process. A therapist could create a safe space, offer support, and help someone begin the journey inward, but they could never do the inner work itself. That responsibility always belonged to the person seeking healing. This is one of the most overlooked parts of Jung's teaching, yet it may also be the most important. Many people still approach healing with the wrong understanding. They believe that if they can only find the perfect therapist, the perfect teacher, the perfect method, or the perfect system, everything inside them will finally change. Again and again, they feel disappointed because the human mind simply does not work that way. What truly works, according to Jung's many years of observation, is something much more difficult than finding the right person. It means learning to give yourself what you have been waiting for someone else to give you. It means learning to be present for yourself in the same way you have always hoped another person would be present for you. It means entering that inner room and remaining there, even when every part of you wants to leave. This is exactly where most people stop. They stop because the room feels unbearable. Inside that room lives everything you have been asking other people to carry for you, every painful feeling you could never face alone, every memory that seemed too heavy to understand without someone else's help, every hidden part of yourself that you pushed away because it felt impossible to hold on your own. All of it is waiting there. The moment you walk into that room by yourself, everything begins rising to the surface. Most people step inside, feel the pain waiting there, and quickly leave again. They search for another therapist, another relationship, another distraction, another book, another method, hoping that something outside themselves will finally remove what they feel inside. Then they wonder why nothing truly changes. But there are some people who stay. Sometimes they stay because they have exhausted every other option. Sometimes they stay because something deep inside quietly says, enough. Those people remain in the room just a little longer. Slowly, they discover something surprising. The unbearable does not disappear overnight, but it gradually becomes easier to carry when they stop running away from it. The pain itself may not vanish. Instead, something new begins growing inside them. A new strength, a deeper capacity, a quiet inner presence that simply did not exist before. Jung called the development of this strength the transcendent function. The name may sound complicated, but the idea is actually very simple. He meant developing the ability to hold opposite experiences at the same time without falling apart, to feel pain while remaining present, to experience fear without letting fear control every decision, to face the unknown without losing yourself inside it, to sit with difficult emotions without immediately needing someone else to rescue you. For Jung, this was real healing. He was never talking about reaching a place where pain disappeared forever or where life suddenly became easy. Healing meant becoming someone who could remain fully present with themselves even during life's hardest moments. Eventually, that inner presence became the very thing people had been searching for in others their entire lives. Before we continue exploring how this work is actually done, I want to mention something. If what I have described feels familiar, if you recognize that pattern of always waiting, always depending on someone outside yourself, always hoping another person will build what only you can build within, then perhaps this message has found you for a reason. There is a guide called True Self-Discovery, containing 24 reflection exercises inspired by Jung's ideas. It was created to support exactly the kind of inner work we are discussing today. If it speaks to you, you can explore it later. For now, let's continue, because Jung developed a very specific practice that helps people begin this journey. He called it active imagination. Many explanations make active imagination sound mysterious or overly complicated. In reality, it is neither. At its heart, it is simply a practice of entering that inner room on purpose, sitting quietly within it, and learning to stay present with whatever appears without trying to control it or escape from it. The basic process sounds simple, even though practicing it can be challenging. You set aside quiet time. You allow your everyday thoughts to settle. Then you wait. You do not force anything to happen. You do not search for immediate answers. Instead, you allow images, feelings, memories, symbols, or small pieces of inner conversation to rise naturally on their own. When something appears, you stay with it. You allow it to unfold instead of pushing it away. You become curious. You ask gentle questions. You listen carefully to whatever answers come. At first, this may sound unusual because most of us believe that we are supposed to control our thoughts. Much of modern self-improvement is based on the idea that you can simply think your way into becoming a happier person, reason your way into emotional peace, or solve every problem through logic alone. Jung discovered something very different. He found that relying only on the thinking mind often keeps the deepest wounds exactly where they are, because the conscious mind, the ego, can only reach so far. The deepest wounds usually exist beneath that level. The unconscious has its own wisdom. It has its own natural way of healing. It speaks through images, emotions, dreams, symbols, and quiet inner experiences, rather than through logical arguments. When we try to solve every emotional wound using only rational thinking, it is like trying to speak one language to someone who understands another. The message never fully reaches its destination. Active imagination teaches us to learn the language that the unconscious already speaks. You sit quietly. You allow whatever wants to appear to come naturally. You take each image, feeling, or symbol seriously, even when it makes no logical sense at first. Over time, something beautiful begins to happen. A completely new relationship slowly develops, not with another person, but with yourself. And that relationship becomes the strongest foundation for healing that no one else can ever build on your behalf. A relationship with yourself at a level that ordinary awareness often overlooks. Jung made it clear that this is not a passive process. It is not daydreaming, escaping from reality, or simply letting your mind wander. It requires steady attention, patience, and a deep level of honesty with yourself. When something rises to the surface, you must be willing to face it. When an inner voice or image reveals something uncomfortable, you must be willing to hear it. When an old feeling appears that you have avoided for years, you must stay with it long enough to truly experience it, instead of pushing it away. This is the work that no one else can do for you. A therapist can explain what is happening. A book can offer useful ideas. A teacher can point you in the right direction. But the actual sitting, the listening, and the willingness to remain in that inner room, when every part of you wants to escape, belongs only to you. It has always been your responsibility, and it is this quiet inner work that creates the deepest and most lasting change. Jung noticed something remarkable in the people who practiced this seriously. As time passed, they began to develop what he called an inner companion. It was not a literal voice telling them what to do. Instead, it was a quiet feeling that they were being guided by something wise within themselves, something that understood them more deeply than their everyday thinking ever could. This inner companion was never created. It had always been there. People simply discovered it after they stopped searching for an outside version of it. The moment this inner presence became real, something changed in all of their relationships. They stopped clinging. They stopped expecting other people to give them what those people were never meant to provide. They learned how to be close to others without becoming emotionally dependent. They could love without expecting someone else to rescue them. They could allow people into their lives without losing themselves in the process. For Jung, this was one of the most important discoveries. Healing yourself without depending on anyone does not separate you from other people. Instead, it finally makes real connection possible. The version of yourself that constantly searched for someone to complete you, fix you, or heal your pain was never truly connecting. It was simply trying to fill an emotional emptiness. No matter how beautiful it appeared, that constant need was not the same as love. Someone who has done this inner work no longer needs another person to behave in a certain way just to feel okay. They have already built that sense of peace inside themselves. Because of that, they are able to meet people as they truly are, instead of expecting them to become something that fills their emotional emptiness. This was the quiet strength Jung noticed in the people who had gone furthest in their journey of individuation. They were not cold or emotionally distant. They did not avoid relationships. They had simply become so deeply connected with themselves that they no longer carried endless emotional hunger into every relationship. Without that hunger, their relationships became more honest, more balanced, and much more genuine. There is one concern that often comes up whenever people hear this idea. Many fear that learning to depend less on others means giving up human connection. They worry that becoming emotionally independent will leave them lonely. They imagine that the inner room somehow replaces relationships with isolation. Jung understood this fear because he saw it again and again in his patients. He pointed out that the fear of being alone is usually not about the absence of other people. It is about the fear of being alone with yourself. Many people fill every quiet moment with conversations, relationships, entertainment, or constant activity because the silence inside feels too uncomfortable. Relationships often become a way of controlling that inner discomfort, helping people avoid emotions they have never learned to face on their own. But when you slowly stop relying on other people for that purpose, something surprising happens. You discover that your inner world is actually survivable. It is not always comfortable. It is not always peaceful, but you can live through it. As you build the ability to remain with your own thoughts and emotions, you no longer need other people to constantly regulate your emotional state. That changes everything. Instead of needing people to make you feel complete, you begin enjoying them simply for who they are. This is the deeper meaning of individuation. Jung was never suggesting that people should become isolated or stop needing others completely. His goal was something very different. He wanted people to build their emotional center within themselves so that relationships became a choice instead of a survival strategy. A person like this is comfortable being alone, but also enjoys being with others. They do not depend on either condition for their sense of worth. Their emotional balance no longer depends on circumstances outside themselves. Jung believed that this kind of person was finally capable of genuine love. When love comes mainly from emotional need, it quietly carries hidden demands. You need the other person to behave in certain ways so you can continue feeling secure. You need them to keep meeting your emotional expectations. You need them to avoid changing in ways that disturb your sense of stability. That is not pure love. It is love mixed with fear and dependence. Love that grows from individuation feels very different. It allows another person to be exactly who they are. It gives them room to grow in directions you may not have chosen yourself. It respects that they have their own inner world, their own struggles, and their own journey. Because your peace no longer depends on controlling them, you can offer them the same freedom that you have learned to give yourself. So how do you actually begin this work? Jung offered several practical ideas that remain valuable today. The first is learning to become comfortable with discomfort, not once in a while, not only when life forces you to, but as a regular part of your personal growth. The inner room contains everything you have spent years avoiding. Walking into it means facing those emotions instead of escaping them. There are no shortcuts. Any method that promises deep healing without emotional discomfort is offering an illusion. Real transformation requires sitting with painful feelings and gradually discovering that you are stronger than you believed. The second practice is learning to build a relationship with whatever appears inside you instead of immediately trying to fix it. When sadness, fear, anger, or loneliness appears, the natural reaction is to make it disappear. People distract themselves, they overthink, they search endlessly for quick solutions. Jung suggested a different approach. Instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this?" ask yourself, "What is this feeling trying to tell me? Where did it begin? What part of me is asking for attention?" These questions are not meant to eliminate the feeling. They are meant to help you listen. Every emotion carries a message. Every feeling deserves to be heard before it can truly begin to heal. The third practice is consistency. This is not something you do only during a crisis. It is an ongoing relationship with yourself. Just as healthy relationships with other people require regular care and attention, your relationship with your inner world also needs steady time, patience, and commitment. Healing is not a single breakthrough moment. It is a lifelong practice of returning to yourself, listening honestly, and choosing again and again to remain present with your own inner life. Over time, those small moments of honesty create lasting change. Little by little, you become stronger, wiser, and more peaceful. Eventually, you realize that the person you had been searching for all along was never outside you. They had been quietly waiting within you, ready to guide you home the moment you chose to truly listen. The unconscious does not reveal itself to someone who visits only once in a while. It slowly opens to those who return again and again, showing through their actions that they are truly willing to stay. Your relationship with yourself grows the same way every meaningful relationship grows, through steady presence, patience, and commitment. There is no shortcut around this process. You either continue showing up for yourself or you don't. What develops over time depends entirely on that choice. The fourth part of this journey is learning a special kind of honesty. Jung was not talking about the honesty we show other people. He meant the honesty we practice within ourselves. It is the courage to stop pretending about what we truly feel, what we genuinely want, and the ways we continue repeating the same patterns we claim we wish to change. This kind of honesty is uncommon because it is often uncomfortable, yet it creates the conditions that allow the unconscious mind to begin revealing itself. The unconscious cannot fully open to a person who continues hiding the truth from themselves. When these four qualities come together, the willingness to face discomfort, the ability to stay with whatever appears, consistent inner practice, and complete honesty with yourself, something remarkable begins to happen. Jung often found it difficult to describe this process with ordinary words. Slowly, the mind starts organizing itself. Patterns that have troubled you for years begin to loosen without force. Hidden connections become easier to recognize. Different parts of your inner world, once scattered and disconnected, slowly begin coming together into something stronger and more complete. This is not magic or wishful thinking. It is the natural result of finally doing the work that has always belonged to you, instead of hoping someone else will do it on your behalf. Jung observed that people who truly committed themselves to this inner journey gradually developed what he described as a transformed relationship with suffering. He never claimed that pain would disappear. He understood that every human life includes loss, disappointment, uncertainty, and hardship. No matter how emotionally mature a person becomes, what changed was not the existence of suffering, but the relationship they had with it. Pain no longer felt like something that simply happened to them. Instead, it became something they could remain present with. It no longer broke them apart. It began teaching them. Suffering stopped being proof that life had gone wrong and became part of the natural experience of being human. Perhaps this is the closest Jung ever came to explaining what true healing really looks like. It is the gradual development of a self that can carry difficulty without being destroyed by it. The only path toward becoming that person leads through the inner room. It requires the quiet work that no one else can complete for you. It asks for the slow, patient, and often uncomfortable practice of giving yourself the same steady presence you have spent so many years hoping someone else would offer. If you have stayed with these ideas until now, there is a good chance that something inside you already recognizes them. Perhaps you recognize the habit of waiting. Perhaps you notice the part of yourself that has always hoped another person would finally arrive and complete the work that has been waiting for you all along. And perhaps, for the first time, you are beginning to understand that the only person who can truly step into that inner room is you. There is both sadness and freedom in that realization. It is painful because it asks you to let go of a hope that may have quietly shaped much of your life. Yet it is also deeply freeing because the moment you stop waiting, you are finally able to begin. The energy that was once spent searching for someone to rescue you becomes available for the work that truly changes you. Jung never promised that this path would be simple. He never suggested that it would lead to endless happiness or permanent peace. What he discovered, after watching people walk this road for many years, was something much more real. Those who committed themselves to this work slowly became more completely themselves. They stopped fighting against their own nature. They learned to meet life with the kind of presence that real life demands. Whatever difficulties came their way, they could face them without falling apart.